You know, this early in the dynasty rookie draft process, this early in the college football season process, everybody's going to have a player or two or three that they just hang their hat on and say, that's my guy. That's my guy going in this season. And for me, as Arizona wide receiver Tedderor McMillan, Ollie Gordon, running back out of Oklahoma State, those are guys that I am just going to love. I know I'm going to like them now. I know as long as they stay healthy, I'm going to like them when we get to the process. But this wide receiver right here out the SEC, 5'11", 208-pound Luther Burden is going to be my guy for a ton of people, and for very good reason. If you ain't never seen him play, Luther Burden is fast, he's twitchy, he's physical, he's fluid, he seems like an ultra competitor, and he's doing it in the SEC. For many people going into the 2024 season, this the wide receiver one. Now again, for me, Tedderor McMillan is my guy, and I talked about that on the last video. You can check that out right there, why I like McMillan so much. But Burden is going to be that player for a lot of people. So shout out to True Media. That's the people that we get the data from. We're going to talk through what Burden did last season at Missouri, how that may translate at the next level, and what we may expect to see this year, or some of the things we may want to see Luther Burden do in 2024 to help elevate his stock, make us feel better about his dynasty value, all that good stuff. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're tapped in. I'm glad you're locked in. If you stick around to the end of the video and you find the information actionable and or entertaining, only thing I ask you to do is hit that thumbs up button, like the content, comment below, and if you want more, subscribe. But y'all know what it is, baby. 2025 Rookie Profile Preview. Let's talk ball.
Okay, let's get it.
In 2023, Luther Burden had 86 receptions for 1,212 yards, leading Missouri in both of those categories, along with 9 touchdowns. This is following up a true freshman season where he didn't do a ton, 375 yards, did score 6 touchdowns, and he carried the ball 18 times for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns. And this level of dynamic playmaking ability, it pops on tape. Now, unlike some smaller, sort of gadgety wide receivers of the past, make no mistake about it, this is a wide receiver that can do other things, not a football player that happens to play wide receiver. Luther Burden was 15th in college football, scoring 20.09 fantasy points per game. His slice of that receiving offense was 35%. Average in college football for players like Burden who received over 40 targets, it's about 23%. So you're saying 35% of the time, the team is saying throw that guy the ball. If you checked out the information from the TAP video, McMillan's getting about 27% of the targets in his offense. Burden 35%, which is incredible. His first down and touchdown percentage, very important metric for me. I want to know how many times when you're being targeted, you're converting for a first down or you're scoring a touchdown. Big fantasy points with that metric right there. 37% of the time, that's what's happening with Luther Burden. Now, let's talk about where he aligns. I think this is very important in how he does versus both man and zone coverage. Versus man, his points per game with a minimum of 40 targets received versus man defense, he was 30th in college football last year with 5.98 fantasy points per game versus man coverage. His first down and touchdown percentage versus man was 37.8%, which was pretty damn good, 12th in college football. Now, where did he play? Where did he align? 31 of those targets versus man came inside at the slot, 4 targets out wide. Now keep that in mind. Let's take a look at how he did versus zone defense. Versus zone, man, Luther Burden was balling. 11th in college football, scoring 13.82 fantasy points per game versus zone. Now his first down and touchdown percentage versus zone was a lot lower at 35.8%, which was 138th in college football. Versus zone, he received 62 targets out of the slot to only 15 out wide. Luther Burden, what he's done so far throughout his early collegiate career has shown an ability to win and win big, but he does that inside at the slot. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, and I too say, just because a player has not been asked to do that doesn't mean he can't succeed. Justin Jefferson in 2019, that LSU record-breaking team, he played in the slot. That's all he did. Straight slot work for Justin Jefferson in 2019. But if you go back to 2018, he did play outside. He strictly played on the outside in 2018, and his route tree was diverse. You look at Justin Jefferson, what he did in that 2019 season, every single category. And we're going to look at Luther Burden's in a minute. Over 2 fantasy points per targeted route. I don't care if it was a cross, a hitch, a go, no matter what Justin Jefferson did from inside the slot, he was proficient at an extremely high level. And I think that's what's important. When we see these route charts, how does it equate to fantasy success? What does this stuff mean? How does it translate, and what can you take away from it? Well, let's check out what Luther Burden did last year and talk about his fantasy success versus the type of routes that he was asked to do. As you can see, Luther Burden, much like most good collegiate wide receivers, dominating on the go route. 31% of his targeted pass routes were go routes, which is screaming straight down the field, where he was scoring 6.22 fantasy points per targeted go route. 1.42 points per game on hitch routes, which he ran 13% of the time. Pretty low. This is one of the big three. Big three across the NFL over the last 3 years: the go route, the out route, and the hitch route. Those are 3 routes that are scoring the most points across the average of the NFL over the last 3 years. You got to be proficient in those. So to see that the hitch route percentage is so low is just a little concerning. You want to see an uptick in that. He ran 4% of his routes for in-breaking routes, but did not do anything on those routes. Not a lot for Luther Burden in that department. 1% of his routes were post routes, didn't do a lot of damage on those, but he did dominate in the screen department, scoring 3.72 fantasy points per targeted screenplay. You throw it to him as a flare, a screen, something behind the line of scrimmage, he is going to do damage. Slant routes, 4% of the time, didn't do anything. 0.34 fantasy points per slant. Didn't run any comebacks, but that's par for the course for most players in college football, the way True Media and PFF count the go, the hitch and the comeback route. Crossing route, monster. Those short area targets, this young man is dominating. 4.66 fantasy points per targeted crossing route. 18% of his routes are crossers. Very good for Luther Burden. Didn't run a lot of corner routes, was pretty successful, 1.27 fantasy points per corner route. And the final one of the big three, the out route, which is green, 2.02 fantasy points per targeted out route. He ran that 13% of the time. Again, if you have not watched any of the videos, Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love, Jacksonville Jaguars, Ted McMillan, the out route, the hitch route, and the go route historically across the NFL, that's what you want your receivers doing. Crossing route, very important as well, too. So seeing that green and the out route and the go route green, this is pretty good for Luther Burden. Some of the concerning things for me, just with his deployment, it's a lot of production short. There's not a lot of stuff happening down the field. And when he is targeted down the field, he's targeted primarily out of the slot. Again, just because he has not done it does not mean he's incapable of doing it if they ask. And that's something that I'm going to be very interested in seeing if the Missouri Tigers are going to ask him to do more than he did last season. When you look at the work that he did out of the slot and what he did short, he was dynamic, one of the best over the last 5 years. His 8.38 points per game on crossing routes and wide receiver screens was third in college football last year, and it's inside the top 15 for the wide receiver position on those 2 routes over the last 5 years. His 6.74 points per game from the slot on go routes was third last year, and just for comparison, Malik Neighbors was number 1 last year in go route point per game percentages with 8.56 points per game on go routes from the slot. So it does show a proficiency for Luther Burden being able to be so dynamic from the slot down the field and also from the slot short. So he can take you over the top and he can murder you down low. Now, we've learned that in the NFL, you've got to have a more robust route inventory in order to have consistent and sustained success. I want to see what they do with him this year. This is a situation and a player that I'm very much watching how they deploy him and just keeping this information at the back of my mind as we enter the 2025 draft cycle process. Luther Burden is talented. Luther Burden is a dog. Luther Burden is a hell of an athlete. And Luther Burden is dynamic from the slot. But right now, I don't think that he and Tetairoa McMillan should even be viewed as the same type of receiver. I don't believe an NFL team today would look at both of those players and have the same type of plan for both Burden and McMillan. I don't think they'd be deployed the same way. You've got a 6'5" outside prototype of days past that moves like a smaller player. And then you've got this Odell Beckham Jr. level explosive fluid athlete that has just been so dominant from the inside. You're very curious to see what Missouri is going to do different this year. Both of these players should be viewed as top prospects in the 2025 class. I don't believe they play the same position. I know they have a WR next to their name, but I don't think they play or occupy the same roles, if that makes football sense. And you know what? I don't give a damn. Amon-Ra St. Brown, whomever it is, get the good player the ball, but I wonder how this is going to impact their draft stock when we get to this process next year. All right, before we get out of here, because on the last video, Tetairoa McMillan, we went through some of the big play numbers just for fun at the end to see how impactful these players were versus some of their counterparts in the NCAA. Well, last year, plays 10-plus yards, Luther Burden, 12th, with Jalen Polk with 45 plays of 10-plus yards. Tetairoa McMillan was third with 54. Plays 20-plus yards in 2023, Luther Burden. He was 23 plays of 20-plus yards. Tetairoa McMillan, 24 plays. So neck and neck, 24 and 23. Tet McMillan had the upper hand. But both of those guys, number 3 and number 4 overall in college football, the only players who had more 20-plus plays than Luther Burden, McMillan, Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors. So you're talking about the best of the best. 50-plus plays. McMillan had 4. Luther Burden had 1. 50-plus play, and then 20-plus receptions. Tet McMillan, 23. Luther Burden, 22. So neck and neck for those guys. So although they play on the outside for McMillan, the inside for Burden, both of them are dynamic and devastating with the ball in their hands. Incredible prospects. Can't wait to watch them progress throughout the season. Again, appreciate y'all being here. If y'all stuck around to the end of the video and you found the information actionable and or entertaining, hit that thumbs up button, like the content, subscribe to the channel, comment below. Tell me who you like. McMillan, you team Tet, or you team Luther Burden? Wide receiver 1 in 2025. Which one are you? Until next time, I'm out of this thing. Peace.